Welcome back. Hope you're having a good weekend. In this video, I want to discuss the topic of trans joy. So I want to read this article written by Mara Mahmood. And thank you, Mara. This is a beautifully written article. And I want to talk about this because trans joy is so often overlooked. And this article explains trans joy and why trans joy is so triggering for people who are not educated on gender, where it's rooted, and what the rest of the population can learn from having trans people in society. So let me read this. This Pride Month, I really want to center trans joy. Over the course of 2024 and 2025, we've collectively witnessed a targeted attack on trans people. Their very right to exist is regularly called into question by politicians, lawmakers, and community members. For me, the biggest question that emerges is why? Perhaps a simple question, but the depth of the inquiry goes to the root of the rejection of trans people and what they represent in many cases. Transgender people fundamentally disrupt the power dynamics upheld by the patriarchal gender binary, creating possibilities for meaningful change for everyone constrained by imposed gender norms and rules. People existing beyond the binary have been documented all over the world, across generations and cultures. The reality is that gender binary and patriarchy were used as tools to exert colonial power on a large variety of indigenous peoples around the world. By enforcing a specific and limited concept of gender, colonial powers sought to challenge different approaches to social organization, decentering women in particular and intentionally removing them from positions of power and influence. Colonialism wasn't just about seizing land and controlling resources, it was also about reconfiguring social dynamics. A 2025 paper on the impacts of colonialization by Candace Desmarais explores just this. The displacement of indigenous matriarchy by colonial patriarchy is significant because it reframed the social structure of their communities, particularly in how gender roles were valued. This demonstrates a parallel to the way that trans people are targeted in our contemporary context. This erasure and quest for power was incredibly violent. Colonialism, violence against and exclusion of trans people, and oppressive gender norms have and will continue to be deeply interconnected. When we examine the connections between those phenomena and hold them in comparison to concepts such as transnormativity, it's difficult to ignore their relationships to each other. First off, it's important to recognize the ways in which trans existence points out how fragile gender norms and expectations are to begin with. If people have the capacity to decide how they want to show up in the world and express their gender authentically and joyously, it invites cisgender people to then reconsider the ways the gender binary has been holding them back. This recognition is a slippery slope that reminds us that the rules of gender norms don't actually hold up when you give people the freedom to choose and explore their identities. It challenges the idea that we must conform to what and who we're told we should be. When talking about gender equity, it is never a conversation exclusively about men and women, but instead addressing all people who exist along the spectrum of gender. As a community, we understand women aren't the only group marginalized by gender. Importantly, the presence and inclusion of people of different gender identities and expressions within a given space, organization, or society opens us up to more opportunities for solidarity, learning, and compassion, all of which help in driving the gender equity movement forward. Whether you're cis or trans, the binary limits all of us. And transphobic rhetoric often perpetuates the idea that there is only one correct way for a person to express their gender, reinforcing harmful stereotypes about what it means to be a man or a woman in society. It creates rigid expectations around gendered performance, maintains harmful hierarchies such as the gendered wage gap, and upholds shared experiences of shame. Typically, narratives around trans people and their experiences in a heteronormative and binary world aren't particularly uplifting or generative. Stories that center suffering, discrimination, and violence are often used as tools to signal boost and garner sympathy and support for folks in the trans community. In the article Trans Joy, Flipping the Script of Marginality, Westbrook and Schuster explain that unfortunately these stories can contribute to transnormativity, which is the belief that there is one correct way to be trans. Rather than helping, spotlighting the negative aspects of the lives of marginalized people causes harm when that becomes the only way we understand these groups. That's why it's important to show trans joy. They go on to explain that contrary to the dominant discourse that equates being trans with misery, there are many trans people who revel in their identities, celebrating the expansiveness that comes with being outside the social norm and how it's helped them see themselves and the world around them in new ways. Worldviews that are shaped by personal trans experience are often infused with more compassion and empathy due to the complexity of their lived experiences and their unique journeys to self-acceptance and self-love. There is courage and depth that is required to define yourself outside the normative state, and that deserves respect and celebration. As a result of the level of self-reflection and identity work required to be authentically themselves, trans people have a capacity to be much more deeply connected to who they are in a way that more of us could benefit from. Knowing and honoring your truth and taking steps to embrace it reflects a powerful commitment that fosters self-love and understanding from within. And I always say that trans people are some of the most self-aware people I've ever met in my life. Trans joy is also a visceral form of resistance. Despite being told they will face rejection, alienation, and pain, amongst the systemic barriers that continue to be at play, trans folks still find love, community, and belonging outside the normative group that rejects them. When we embrace the vastness of identity and experience that many trans people model for us, we can transform how we engage with the world, people around us, and the systems we collectively navigate and uphold. So I hope y'all enjoyed that. It gives us something to think about. It definitely gives me something to think about. So leave your comments, tell me what you think, and like this video, share it. I'll be back very soon. Bye, guys.